Good evening and welcome to Bronx Talk. Traditionally, right after Election Day, elected officials from all over the state, along with journalists and essentially everyone and anyone with political interests, travel to the Caribe Hilton in San Juan, Puerto Rico for the Somos el Futuro, We Are the People conference. It's an annual event that features 5 days of conferences, workshops, networking, and field visits to explore issues like healthcare, education, environmental racism, politics, and much more. And so tonight we too will join Somos el Futuro to get an inside look at what's going on down there, as well as take a look at the just completed election that involves obviously the presidency, as well as Congress and the state legislature. So please join me in welcoming from San Juan, Puerto Rico, a reporter and a co-author of the New York Playbook for Politico. It is Jeff Coltin. Nice to see you, Jeff. Always, and of course, quite jealous.
You too. Thank you for having me.
There with the palm trees, and also the deputy managing editor of City and State New York. It is Holly Pretsky. Nice to see you, Holly. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
Holly, let's just start with you. What's going on down there? Just give us an idea. Now, I've talked to elected officials during this conference or after this conference a number of times. Some say, we're just enjoying the beautiful sun, as Jeff is in Puerto Rico. But others say, you know what, these meetings are important, and we've crafted some ideas for legislation and programming, and for the largely Democratic attendees that are there, this must be a very interesting time to get together.
Yeah, Gary, you cut out a little bit there. I hope you can hear me. But yeah, this is an annual conference. It's considered a can't miss conference for anyone who works in New York politics, including some of our major elected officials. We're expecting the governor today, the speaker of the city council, and the state attorney general will all be here. We also have all of our almost all of our mayoral candidates here who are challenging New York City Mayor Gary Adams in 2025. We have a ton of city council members, and of course, huge delegations from the state legislature. And this conference is supposedly about empowering Latino communities and regrouping before the start of session every year, but it's also a major can't miss event for lobbyists, consultants to meet with lawmakers in a much more relaxed environment where they have a lot of access to the people who run New York.
There must have
this
been.
Year,
okay, I was just going to say there must have been a lot of hand wringing over the results. I was looking even in the borough of the Bronx. The Republican vote went from 15.9% in 2020 to 27% this year. And if the Bronx, which has always been a blue county, is going that direction, numbers in Queens were shown to be the same. There must be a lot of concern.
Yeah, everybody is talking about that.
Go ahead, Jeff. You can weigh in.
Yeah,
go ahead.
Talking about that. That seems to be really the one of the top focuses here. Everybody has an agenda for how to, turn around the Republican gains, how to help Democrats gain back some momentum. Obviously, still a blue state, and New York picked up some congressional seats. But, we're now talking about losing a lot of ground in places like Nassau County and even in deep blue places, yes, like the Bronx and Queens. So, this is a heavily, heavily Democratic Party conference coming from New York. And everybody seems to be talking about, okay, how can we fix this? How can we right the ship? A big focus, everybody has been saying economy, economy, economy. Some people have been saying, let's shift away from social issues, controversial social issues. Specifically, people have been saying, I guess support for trans rights and trans New Yorkers is too hot. I think that's going to start a real conversation within the Democratic Party, talking about the right way to, stand up for, LGBTQ New Yorkers, while not turning off voters. So these are some of the conversations that are happening at Somos.
What do you think, Jeff? I'll ask you the question. What do you think the result is going to be? Is it going to be a legislative result? Because let's face it, it used to be 3 men in a room. Now it's 2 women and a man in the room. But are they going to propose things legislatively, or is this really a political discussion to talk about strategy for the Democratic Party? And Holly, I'll ask you the same question in a moment.
It's been mostly political conversation so far. It's really about, okay, how can we win elections in the future? So just talking about messaging has been most of the conversations that I've overheard and have been having. That said, I also heard Assemblymember Karina Reyes from the East Bronx talking that she wants to have a special session. She wants legislators to go up to Albany before the end of the year in order to take some proactive moves to help protect against Trump. She even said build a wall against Trump coming back into office. So I think that's part of the conversation too, is also what can our heavily Democratic legislature do governmentally to help, defend against a Trump administration, or, what moves can be made before he comes into office.
Yeah, I think the comment that, we're going to stay away from controversial social issues and deal with maybe the more practical things like economy is interesting and interesting to think about. Holly, what's your thought about that? About what they're going to take away or what they're going to do?
Yeah, on the politics side, I think there's a lot of reckoning and a lot of soul searching around how to appeal to both Latino voters. We're in San Juan. We have a huge Puerto Rican diaspora community in New York City. So there's a lot of focus on Latino political power here. So there's a lot of soul searching around how to not take those voters for granted in New York and across the country. And also voters without a college education. I've heard that a few times from several different lawmakers as they're processing these results. They're saying, we really need to find a way to access these voters, particularly men who do not have a college degree. On the legislative side, I would say one issue that has come up in addition to the possibility of having a special session is congestion pricing. The governor abruptly canceled this scheme of congestion pricing to raise money for the MTA before the election, and there was speculation that she did that to help Democrats win House seats back. But now with the prospect of a Trump presidency, it's seeming more urgent. If there's any chance of her reinstating that policy, she would need to do it before the advent of a Trump administration, or at least that's what people are speculating about here.
Yeah.
So that's another thing on the policy side.
Let's just hold that congestion pricing for a moment. We do have a quote which actually was reported in City and State New York by Karina Reyes, who's the chair of the New York State Assembly and Senate's Puerto Rican Hispanic Task Force. She said, I think it's definitely an opportunity for us to come to terms with the fact that we need to change course and we need to figure out why we are hemorrhaging membership in the Democratic Party and how we really correct our messaging to bring more voters into the polls. And that's what she said. I'm interested in, Holly, I'll ask you first. This is in Puerto Rico. There is a large Latino contingent, certainly in the borough of the Bronx. We are represented by numerous Latino elected officials who are Democrats. Yet, nationally and even locally, Latinos did not come out for Kamala Harris. I thought that, number one, I thought it was surprising. And number two, I'm trying to weigh the conflict. Here are all these elected officials. Here, the Bronx is 56% Hispanic, and yet many of the Harris campaign didn't really resonate with them. Holly, you can go first, and then Jeff will weigh in on that with you.
Yes, I just went to a panel about this today, actually, so I'm pulling up my notes about it. There's a lot of discussion of Latino voters, and there's some frustration among political experts around blame being passed around and assigning blame to Latinos not turning out. They're noting that Latinos did vote for Kamala Harris. The margins were less than in 2020 for Joe Biden, but they did come out for Kamala Harris in a bigger proportion than white voters. So they're noting that, first of all, and bringing up a lot of different things. I want to echo what Jeff was describing about the sense that the strategy of emphasizing social issues, cultural issues over the economy, there seems to be a consensus that that was a blunder on the Democratic Party's part, that there was a messaging disconnect where Latino voters sometimes it's assumed that their number one priority, for example, is immigration. And what I'm hearing here is that for a lot of Latino voters, it's really about the economy. And the consensus seems to be that Republicans were able to make a more cogent, a simpler, more direct economic argument. And Kamala Harris just wasn't able to match that. And so the Latino vote, the potential there for Democrats just really wasn't.
Right.
But there's definitely a lot of soul searching about it. Henry Garrido, I don't think I can swear here, but he said from the panel stage, we just have to accept the fact that we got our butts kicked. To use the
I mean, there's no question about that. Let's see. I think I had a quote from a headline from the Times today, which talked about, said that Democrats, there's a lot of blame game, and the Democrats are looking at a dark future. I just think it's fascinating, the whole conversation about the economy. During the last week of the campaign, there was excellent economic news. The hiring news was strong, and the lowering of inflation rate was strong. Yet I never heard that come out of Kamala Harris's mouth. In addition, I got to tell you, I drive a car. I'm paying at least $1 less for gas than I have been paying, and I never once heard any Democrat talk about that while Trump was talking about what a terrible economy we have. All I kept hearing was it's a terrible economy. At no time did I hear, gas, the price of gas, which is supposedly a barometer of the economy, is at least $1 lower. I'm paying at least $1 lower than I was paying maybe a year ago. Jeff, your thoughts about that?
Yeah, no, I think there's a wide agreement that Trump's messaging was more effective, to say the least. There's also, however, a debate that I've heard here at Somos about whether the issue here was turnout and whether Democrats should be focusing on bringing more people to the polls or on persuasion, and whether the issue should be trying to convince those swing voters and bringing them over to the Democratic side. I think that a lot of the folks, especially on the left, the more progressives, they're saying that this was really a turnout issue, that the Democrats simply, didn't motivate enough people to come out, that more people voted, especially in New York. A big issue seems to be simply that Democrats didn't come out as much as they did in 2020, as opposed to more Republicans coming out. Certainly there was some of that, but yes, I think the bigger issue was that just simply turnout has been down. So, time will tell when we really look through the numbers, but there are just so many different angles that Democrats could take after this election of, how do we improve margins? How do we make sure that the tide turns in the future? And I think people here are looking at every single different angle. Everybody has their own idea. Everybody is, people have been talking about the blame game. There's been a lot of finger pointing. Everybody is, saying it's their fault, it's their fault, it's their fault. And
I got to tell you,
I don't think answers are going to come out of this one. I think it's more questions will come out of Somos rather than answers.
I got to tell you, they better stop doing that and start figuring this out. I'll tell you one thing which I have thought about, and I haven't seen it anywhere. A lot of people, they let's say Democrats flip on Fox News a little bit and they watch it and they say, oh, they're lying, they're distorting, et cetera, et cetera. But you look across America now, maybe not quite as much in New York. Every single town in America, especially in small town America, they have that Fox News on all the time. And even if some of the messaging was distorted or was not truthful, like many of the things that Donald Trump had said, that migrants are committing the crimes and everything else, that was hammered home 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, all across America on that channel. There's nothing you can do about what they put out. But to me, that messaging got through because, even in your sleep, if you're seeing that all the time, you're going to start to say, well, you know what, this is on TV. Maybe it's correct. I do want to get back to issues. Holly mentioned congestion pricing. Jeff, we'll give you a chance at that, and we'll go back to you with Holly. Do you think the governor is ready to do this as a political move? Supposedly, it was a political move to remove it because they felt that it was going to hurt Democrats in the long run. Do you think if she is this the time now to instate it, or just let it, drift away because Donald Trump is not going to provide the federal support for it? So Jeff, you first, and then Holly, you get that second.
Look, the advocates saw an opportunity here. The people that are supporting congestion pricing said, now is the time to act. Let's go, let's go. I would be very surprised if that happened. I think it's much more likely that Governor Hochul is going to effectively let congestion pricing lapse and die. I'll admit that's more of speculation from my part. I have not yet talked to people close to the governor. I don't have a sense of what she's actually thinking. But from my experience covering the governor and Democrats after losses, I just don't think that they're going to then push through this big ambitious plan. I think instead it's going to be too bad. I guess we failed on congestion pricing.
Yeah, that maybe we have bigger fish to fry. Holly, your thoughts on that?
I've heard some hopeful thoughts from lawmakers who support it. I've heard that they are somewhat optimistic that it will come back in some form. So not the $15 toll, not the same level of funding that was originally proposed, but there is some hope that maybe it could come back at the lower toll or some version of it. We did ask Jano Lieber, the chair of the MTA, about this today, and he said what he always says. He's like, I've said this a million times to you guys. The governor said that she was pausing it, and I take her at her word that it's just a pause, that she didn't cancel congestion pricing. So he's still hopeful. We saw him meeting actually with State Senator Jamal Bailey, who's the chair of the Bronx Democratic Party. So we have no idea what that was about, but we saw them chatting, and I know it's a concern in the Bronx. So.
Well,
so all this to say, I think Jeff and I neither of us know. It's uncertain, we're watching.
What is interesting about what you said is you say it's a pause. The question is how long a pause, and in this case, if you wait till January 20th, you can pause it all you want, but then you can say goodbye to it.
Right.
Another issue that has come up, and I'm very curious about it. The mayor of the city of New York, Eric Adams, was asked about Trump's stance on migrants and deporting undocumenteds, and he was, as far as I could read, decidedly non-committal about saying, no, we support the migrants, et cetera, et cetera. He said something like, we'll support the laws of New York City, et cetera, et cetera. Jeff, you cover City Hall. Do you think the mayor, who has not really criticized Donald Trump, is ready to just say, you know what, let's let Trump do it because I've been so frustrated with this migrant thing. His policy is probably going to help me out, whether or not New Yorkers like the idea or don't like the idea. Jeff, your thoughts on that?
Yeah, it's remarkable to see the mayor, being so hesitant to criticize Donald Trump. Most Democrats are really eager to say that this guy is horrible and is going to, lead to mass deportations as he has promised. Instead, the mayor is saying, let's take a pause. I don't want to create fear. Let's wait and see. And then at the same time, he's saying, yeah, we do have sanctuary city laws, but by the way, I want to change some of those sanctuary city laws. So yeah, a lot of more pro-immigrant Democrats are really frustrated by the mayor's messaging. But the mayor does have at least a political goal here. And his political goal is to not anger Donald Trump and is to, in theory, if he plays nice with Trump, then, maybe Trump will not, try to enact retribution against New York City. Maybe there can be some peace made between City Hall and the White House. We really did not see that with Bill de Blasio. He was one of those folks that really wanted to fight Trump on every single area, whereas Eric Adams is looking for some middle ground. There's a whole political argument about that, about whether he's looking for some benefits to his legal case. But I think bigger picture, the mayor is hoping or thinking that he can find the middle ground with Donald Trump on immigration. And time will tell if Trump is going to be an honest broker on that, or if this will benefit the city, or if if he does enact mass deportations, that would be absolutely devastating for New York City. But it's still an open question about what he means by that, or
Yeah.
whether that's just a talking point.
We still have a Democratic majority in New York State. In that the Assembly, the Senate, and the governor are all Democrats. Holly, was there anything of surprise for you? There were no surprises in the Bronx. I mean, let's face that. But was there any surprises for you, or any elections upstate or around the state that you think are significant?
I just want to add one thing on the immigration point.
Sure, go ahead.
The mayor did, or his administration did, try and calm any immigrants in the city who might be feeling scared or uncomfortable, telling them definitely still keep going to school, don't keep your kids home from school. But in a way, it's not so surprising that the mayor hasn't been full-throated in his commitment to protect immigrants. He's really butted heads with the Biden administration repeatedly on this very issue, and he's even implied that the reason that he's under a 5-count federal indictment right now is because he called out the Biden administration for not giving New York City more help, as there was an influx of more than 200,000 migrants since spring of 2022 into the city. So in a way, this is a continuation of Eric Adams' rhetoric on immigration. But as far as statewide races, of course, we had these 6, depending on who you're asking, swing seats in New York. And Democrats, who had a pretty devastating year in 2022 as far as House races go in the state, were able to claw back some of those seats. So I think that Governor Kathy Hochul, who was under tremendous pressure, including from former Speaker of the House, Nancy Pelosi, to get her act together in New York and lead New York Democrats to reclaim some of those seats, I think she's probably, despite the victory of Donald Trump, I think she's probably breathing a sigh of relief, because we do see, I think that the race on Long Island between Laura Gillen and Anthony Diaz-Pasito was actually recently called for Gillen, the Democrat, so she unseated Diaz-Pasito there. And then you saw Josh Riley unseat Mark Molinaro in the Hudson Valley. You saw Tom Suozzi hang on to a seat, and you saw John Mannion, state lawmaker, pick up a seat for Democrats when he defeated Brandon Williams, who was elected as part of that red wave in 2022 as well. So there was a silver lining from a Democratic perspective.
You brought up Laura Gillen, and this brought up something that I noticed as a consumer of media. She ran a series of ads, which I saw very, very often, that said, "I am going to close the border. I'm going to close the border." And then she said, "on Long Island." And before I really knew who she was, I just assumed she was a Republican. And it occurs to me, and I'm sure it's occurred to both of you, that people campaigning now, they don't put their party in the ad. So all you do is know the issues of what they are. And of course, some of them are paid by PACs, I get that. But in that particular ad, I went for several weeks thinking that, oh, well, here's a Republican candidate talking about the border and trying to bring that issue home. But here was a Democrat using that issue from a Republican vernacular, so to speak, and yet she was a Democrat who got elected. I just thought that was Holly, you brought her name up, so do you want to mention that? I just thought that was really a fascinating statement.
I feel like we're witnessing the beginning of a realignment, or there's just that Twilight Zone situation where sometimes it gets hard to tell. Like, wait, do you care about the deficit? Are you a real Republican, or do you care about immigrants? Are you a real Democrat? And it's like, what are the ideologies? It does feel like we're in this moment of shift. But as far as Laura Gillen, I think that Tom Suozzi in his special election after George Santos was booted from the House of Representatives, Tom Suozzi, a Democrat who previously held that seat, he really forged a playbook for Democrats on Long Island. He launched his campaign and did not invite a single other he didn't appear with a single other Democrat at his campaign launch. He appeared with regular people, Long Islanders. He really did not brand himself as a blue Democrat. He branded himself as a common sense veteran lawmaker who can deliver for Long Island. And I think he was very successful with that in defeating Mazi Pilip. in that special election. And that kind of paved the way and gave a playbook to Laura Gillen and to John Avlon, who was not successful in defeating Nick Laloda in Suffolk County. But I think that's what you're seeing. Even Kristen Gillibrand, our senator, who won pretty handily against Mike Sapercone. You see in her ads, she's talking about safety, security. She's talking about cracking down on the border and on crime. So you see these Democrats, you know, being cautious
Holly,
about how far left they go.
We're going to run out of time. I just want to ask just another question about issues. Programs like Head Start and all those kinds of things. It'll be fascinating to see what kind of funding there is for it. Jeff, I want to just conclude with a question about the mayor. And it's very interesting with this kind of shift that we've just been talking about. It will affect the election. Plus, I loved his, I guess it was Holly's explanation, or one of you said, well, he had the same reaction that it was because of President Biden that he was, accused of all that wrongdoing. That is a Trump statement, no question, because he said that the whole justice system is compromised. Anyway, Jeff, how do you view the mayor's profile as it comes into the next election?
Look, he's always had a really uphill battle. He's incredibly unpopular, roughly 30% approval rating. And, you know, there's a big question here about whether Trump coming into office will help him. Will he be able to pitch himself saying, hey, now more than ever, we need a steady hand in City Hall, so stick with me? Or will his opponents say, this guy is compromised, this guy isn't even a real Democrat, and is then he going to be swept out of office? I mean, he already had a challenge, so maybe this will shake it up enough.
Jeff, we got to run.
Benefit him somewhat.
We got to run. Listen, Holly Pretsky, Deputy Managing Editor at City and State New York, thank you so much. Go back, get some good food, enjoy the sun and the surf. And Jeff Coltin, a reporter and co-author of the New York Playbook at Politico. Thank you both. I don't know what we'd do without you. We wouldn't know what the heck was going on. I think the most important thing we heard today was the fact that they're not going to look at social issues, but more other issues. Anyway, we do got to go. So we'll say thank you to both of you. Thanks to our producer, Rebecca Hemick, Will Guzman, our director, Yorellison Carnacion is on graphics, Ian Neville on audio, our editor is Yenelsida Diaz, and of course we have the cast of thousands with us here in the studio. And to you too, the people of the Bronx. We'll be back next week.